One of the coolest things about the video gaming medium is that it's essentially made up of black boxes. You don't need to know the rules to play, and every move you make is tacitly a legal one. This also means that games can get incredibly large and incredibly deep, without having to worry about overwhelming the player. They don't need to know every aspect of the game to have a fun time, but consequently that means players who want to understand can have a hard time getting the information they want. How can games present large swaths of data and info in an accessible and condensed way? How can external sites help turn that junk into useful knowledge? And how can the two sync up to make using their counterpart as painless as possible? The first step to making a giant game comprehensible is some sort of in-game encyclopedia, where the game just lays out all the information for the player to review. This is a critical feature for many games, but it's also rarely sufficient. For example, take Pokémon, where you can get a critter's type and habitat, but very little else. Without outside information, you'd have no idea how fast or strong your pet could be until you actually go through the rigorous process of training and leveling. Even the information present is woefully unhelpful. Sure, you can find a Shinx on the beach in the rain, but good luck guessing the next time that'll happen. If we were ever to get a quality Pokédex, it would need learn sets, base stats, and evolution conditions at a minimum. Luckily, we were born just in time to abandon the flesh base and explore the digi-world. There are people just as passionate about these video games as their devs, and they can satiate the need for an info hub for these big puzzles in need of solving. With that said, these wikis like Bulbapedia and similar sites run into their own problem. You see, there's information and then there's knowledge. In a game like Minecraft, information would be what type of blobs and contraptions are available, and what their function is. That's easy enough to put on a wiki, but knowledge is the implementation of that tech in relevant ways. You can explain how a piston works on a web page just fine, but explaining the intricacies of how you use them to make a secret passage may just come across as fluff. On a wiki's end, this can be a bother, since everything has to be abstract. But it's actually good for the community, since individual players get to post their own tech, driving that fan engagement up. The reason I bring up Minecraft in particular here is because its sites tend to handle this angle fairly well, by linking YouTube videos at the end of their articles, showing off some of the more advanced implementations of useful blocks. Pokemon, on the other hand, really suffers from its size. In Vanilla Shield, if I wanted a Scrappy Pangoro as a false swiper, I'd need to hop on Cerebi, check if the hidden ability was available in the first place, open all these den listings in a new tab, then Control F my way through a bunch of different den listings to find the one where I even get a roll at the ability I want, then reverse engineer which den the site was even talking about from a picture, and then if I valued my time, I'd need to mess with the game's clock to get the right drop. Very tedious, very confusing, and very unfun all throughout. I don't know how Game Freak expected people to wrap their head around that. Obviously, the best way to avoid these kinds of problems is to make your game easy to understand, but entertainment is built to last nowadays, so big games come naturally, meaning more rules and subsystems to make ends meet. This doesn't give games a free pass to be obfuscated as fuck though. You want the player to be able to find information in the minimum amount of button presses, meaning that every alt-tab and click contributes towards frustration. Ideally, a game would have tons of preview images for stuff like armor before you buy it, or example builds to show off certain tech. You don't want the player to accidentally spend resources on something that they end up not using. If the player needs additional materials to craft something, then tell them what the material is. That way they are saved from needing to reverse engineer it from the final products page. Preferably, the game should tell them where to get the missing ingredients in-game too, but the more info you add, the more reading the player is going to discard. There's some wiggle room if a wiki is inevitable, but devs should also try to make the site manager's job as easy as possible. Things like drop rates and frame data are typically black boxes that the player just don't need to know to have fun, but if you know that someone somewhere is going to be posting the numbers, it really helps to give them the exact data. To summarize my summary of summaries, in-game indexes become a necessity in larger games, but often end up lacking. This can make a game frustrating and obtuse, but in a backwards way, it can cause a vacuum that the community can come together to fill. Wikis are an inevitability for big games, but the more information they need to convey, the less knowledge comes across. Some people can enjoy the experience of getting into the weeds, but generally it's a pain to bounce between wikis, forums, and whatnots. The goal should be to make the game intricate but easy to interpret. If those end up mutually exclusive, then something went wrong along the way. The greatest boon and greatest bane of the video gaming medium is that the magic is hidden behind the scenes. But once you understand the secret mechanisms beneath the surface, you really appreciate the big picture.